Right, good afternoon. So welcome to our collective worship for today. And is a bit of a different one today, and more importantly, something that I quite look forward to when it comes to this time of year. And obviously, I don't know what the tradition is here, but we used to, my old school, we used to like to celebrate it by doing something. And we find out a little bit more when we do our collective worship. So I'll share the screen for now. So there we go. As we always do, we start our collective worship by lighting the 3 candles. We light these candles in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. So what are we thinking about in our collective worship? Well, today we're going to be thinking about the Christian festival of Lent. And obviously we're going to try and think about what is meant by the meaning of Lent, and it's obviously part of a Christian festival. So before we get started, Lent usually comes around the same sort of time every year, and one of the things that I like to do around this time is it's Pancake Day, and obviously we make pancakes, and that's always around the beginning of the festival of Lent. But we'll find out what that means to Christians. So before we get started, let's think about what you did before you came into school this morning, those of you that are in school. For some of you at home, think about what it was that you did to get up and get ready for your learning for the day. What sorts of things did you prepare for? Obviously, for me, when I think about coming to work, well, the first thing I did, thankfully, was wake up. So I managed to wake up, and then I got myself out of bed, which is pretty impressive on a Thursday. And then obviously the first thing I did was I got myself dressed. Then I went and had a quick wash on my face. And then it was downstairs to feed the cat, make myself a cup of tea and have some breakfast before packing in my lunch for the day. And then after I'd had all my breakfast and had my cup of tea, I went up, brushed my teeth. And then I was ready to come to school. So then I got outside, got my coat on, put my gloves on because it was quite cold this morning, got my school bag, and then got to the car, and I had to make sure that it was defrosted. So then I had to go back in and put some hot water on it. So these are the sorts of things that I did just to prepare for coming to school this morning. That's a huge list of things that you would have done. And I'm sure some of you would have done similar things before you came to school. So before we even got to school, we had prepared and arranged loads and loads of things for us to do. And it's pretty impressive. Now, I know that for some of you, I know I was talking to someone who's in the Brownies, actually. I wondered if any of you were Cubs or Scouts or Guides, and if there's a group in this area. Obviously, you probably haven't been doing very much meeting of the people, but I know I was talking to someone who was on Brownies, and they were saying they did their Brownies meetings by Zoom. But obviously, when we think about being a Cub or a Scout, and when I was a child, I was a Cub and a Scout, and a Guide, they have a special motto. And the motto they have is to be prepared. And being prepared is what they have to think about when it comes to, all eventualities. We are prepared. Now, for example, when we think about being prepared, I talked to you this morning today about what I did this morning. What I did this morning before I came to school. But there's lots of other times where we have to make lots of preparations. So, for example, what preparations do you think you'd need to make if, for example, it's just buffering. What sorts of preparations do you think you would make if, and you're waiting for it. See if we can hurry things along a little bit. Well, we'll go off script for a moment. So, for example, what preparations do you think you would have to make if you were, say, going on holiday? Now, lots of things you would need to do for if you were going on holiday. First thing you'd need to think about is what would you need to do? You would need to make sure the first place you would do is select a place that you'd like to go. So you'd like, right, okay, well, I want to go on holiday to Spain, for example. So you think about that. I want to go to Spain. The next thing you need to prepare for is thinking, okay, I want to go to Spain. Next thing I need to do is I need to book a hotel that I want to go and stay at. So you pick your Spain, pick the hotel. Next thing you need to do is book yourself a flight. So then you need to book yourself a flight. And hopefully if I just stop sharing for a moment and pull up my presentation again, hopefully we can pick it up from where we left off. Okay, share my screen. Hopefully it won't buffer. So going on holiday, like I said, so the first thing you need to do is book somewhere to stay once you've decided where you're going to go. And then you need to maybe book a flight if you're going to go there. Some of the other things you'd need to do maybe is think about, well, if I'm going to Spain and I'm going on a beach holiday, I need to make sure I pack the right clothes. So you need to make sure maybe you have your swimming kits, your shorts and your t-shirt, sunglasses, things like that. Or if you were going to go skiing, you might make sure you have got nice warm clothes. So you need to pack the right clothes. And then if you're like me, you need to make sure you've got someone to look after the pets who you're going to leave behind. So these are all things you would do. Now, the thing about it is if you were to remove one of these things and not be prepared, it would be a bit of a nightmare. Imagine flying all the way to Spain to realize you've not booked somewhere to stay, or flying all the way to Spain, getting into your hotel and realizing all of your clothes are winter clothes, or not having someone to organize the pets. So there's lots of things that you would need to do to make sure you prepared for when you were going on a holiday. And for example, there's lots of things when we think about having a friend to come and sleep over. Lots of things you'd need to make sure you do. First of all, you need to make sure you told the friend that's going to come. Because obviously it would be a bit of a lonely sleepover if you didn't have them. For example, if you were going to go and take your favorite ballet exam, so you were doing your grades in your ballet and then you went to do your ballet exam and you forgot to prepare by practicing the right dance routine or how you're going to get to your ballet exam. If you're going to play or preparing for your favorite football match. So things you need to make sure is obviously you need to know who you're playing, where you're going, making sure you've got your boots and your kit, turning up at the right time, lots of things to prepare for, making sure you've practiced before you've done it. Even if you were participating in the Olympics, obviously there's lots of things that you would do, hours and hours of things you would do to train and get yourselves ready to be ready for the Olympics. And then you need to prepare for it by all of the healthy diets and things like that. Without any of those steps in place in that preparation, it would be a pretty poor performance. And obviously when we think about this back in the day when we were having school plays, obviously make sure you need to learn your lines, the days that the plays were on, making sure to invite your parents to come and watch you and things like that, and grands and granddads and aunts and uncles. And again, without those, if they fell down, it would fall down if you forgot to practice your lines or tell people where the show was. So all of these things we do to prepare. So just like preparing for all of these things, today we're thinking about Lent, and this is a time when Christians remember it is a preparation time for Jesus, and it was when Jesus was preparing himself. What was he preparing himself for? Well, obviously we know about when Jesus was born, and then for 30 years Jesus had lived in Nazareth, but at the age of 30 he knew he was going to start his public work. This is about going around talking to people about God and start teaching about all the amazing things that God could do. And obviously he also started going around doing these amazing miracles. Now, he knew it wasn't going to be easy because he'd have to persuade lots of people that what he was saying was right and true. And also he realized and he knew that it would lead to his death, which is the crucifixion that we talk about at Easter. So he knew all of this was coming. So he had to prepare himself. So in preparation for his work, Jesus went off on his own to spend some time in the desert. And he went off for the desert for 40 days. And for 40 days, he didn't eat and he didn't drink. And during the time, he was told or presented with lots of temptations. So people appeared to him and tempted him to do different things. And they were trying to make him do things that were wrong and not good to do. But in the end, Jesus didn't give up to those temptations. And at the end of the 40 days, he left the desert and began to work, to come and do his work on earth. His time in the desert had prepared him for doing his work. Now, Lent is that period of time that leads up to Easter, those 40 days before Easter, that Jesus went off into the desert, and people prepare for it, and it begins on Ash Wednesday, and it's the day after Shrove Tuesday, which we call Pancake Day, which is what I was talking about earlier. And obviously pancakes were cooked back then, because what it was people would generally use up all of the things that would go off over the 40 days when they were fasting. So things like eggs and milk would go off, and they would make pancakes from them so that they were used up and they weren't wasted. And that's why we have the pancakes. But the Lent that follows it lasts 40 days. It doesn't include the Sundays. And it's the length of time that Jesus spent in the desert preparing for his work. Now, for Christians, though, Easter is an important time, and they remember the resurrection of Jesus from the cross. And because Christians want to be prepared for the celebration of Easter, they use Lent as this time to think about God and think about Jesus, and they have special services at church to pray, to go in and pray for these things that have happened. Now, what generally happens is during that period, and whilst they're preparing for this and thinking about God, they take the time out to start to think about people who are not as fortunate as them. And then they also think about this time to spend those 40 days giving up something to prepare or show acknowledgement for this. Now, what we tend to do as part of Lent, and Christians tend to do this, is they give up something as a mark of respect for Jesus, who gave up his food and drink when he went into the desert. Now, we've done things in the past, like people say, well, I'm giving up chocolate for Lent, I'm going to give up meat for Lent. Some people say, I'm even going to give up watching television for Lent, or crisps and snacks and things like that. And we make these pledges that we're going to give these things up over the period of Lent. Now, in recent years, though, what's been good is people have given up this idea of giving something like this, but actually doing something good for Lent. So rather than giving something up, they think about doing something good. And it could be something as simple as tidying your bedrooms, or it could be things like helping clean the house, encouraging someone every day, telling them that the things that they do are good. It could be doing your schoolwork without complaining about it, or it could be being kind to people, or being thankful for the things that you do, or taking time in your day to be thankful for the things that you have. So we tend to move towards these sorts of good gestures rather than giving up something over the period of Lent. So with that in mind, we have a time for reflection. Now, during this reflection, I want you to think about, and maybe close your eyes for a moment, and think about, could you do something special for Lent that could help somebody else? So rather than giving up something, you can give up your time to try and help somebody else. Maybe it's to raise money, like Kai's doing for Young Minds. Maybe you could raise money or a charity to do something instead. Maybe you could decide that actually every time I see somebody for the next 40 days, I'm going to give them a compliment. And the nice thing about doing something for 40 days is when we do those things, it's been scientifically proven that that if you do something for more than 21 days, it becomes a habit, and you would do it automatically without thinking about it. So imagine doing something kind and nice for somebody for 40 days means that it would become more of a habit, And you could carry on doing it for the rest of the year, which would be amazing. So think about that. And whilst your eyes are closed and you're having a think, if you'd like to place your hands together, and we'll finish with a prayer. Dear Lord, thank you that in the busyness of life, there are times to stop and think. Help us to never be so busy that we don't have time to be peaceful and silent. Thank you for the times such as Lent that remind us to think about you and consider what we can do to help those less fortunate than we are. Please help us always to be prepared to help other people. Amen. Okay, so I'll stop sharing the screen for a moment. So that's a kind of a nice idea to finish on, the idea that we could do something for the next 40 days to do something kind or nice or caring or thoughtful for somebody else, giving up our time to spend thinking about them. And like I said, after 21 days, who knows, it might become a bit of a habit and you carry on doing it, and that would be fantastic. Right, so there's our collective worship for this week and our last one for this first half term. Thank you for those who log in and watch the assemblies. It's been really good. After half term, obviously, we'll still be coming back and I'll be doing some more collective worship. Tomorrow is our celebration and praise assembly. So that will be good. So looking forward to seeing who got themselves a praise certificate and all of those merit points tomorrow. So take care, everyone. Have a good rest of the day, and I shall see you tomorrow for our celebration and praise. Thanks, everyone. Bye.